Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm going to say it even though they made fun of me for doing this. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Link is right here in the description. $2.99 per month. You can bypass the Apple upcharge. Place for the most heat information, conversation, celebration, and lately consternation. We appreciate the adulation. Check it out. Link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge. Get access to 10 different channels, plus the stage shows, everything else we do there. We recommend the draft channel, the NBA channel, the transactions channel. You can see everything is segmented. And if you go to the wrong place, Eternal boot you for the rest of your life. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Play across the sports spectrum, up to 6 players together. Again, you can play MLS with NHL, with NBA. All of it is there. Go to Prize Picks. Use the code F-I-V-E. Get your free $50. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. We're doing a bunch of episodes leading up to Pat Riley's press conference, whenever that is, but it's going to be soon. So make sure that you check all of them out. We did the Jimmy Butler in the second round episode. Alex and I did that one. I apologize for cutting Alex off. I had to get my sushi. Uber Eats, you can't control that. Also, did 2 episodes with Brian Fonseca. But those are going to hold until after this one. His idea is the Heat should just punt. Just punt. You're not going to compete in the East right now. Give up the year and reset. Something they will not do. But I heard Brian out on it, and he has a very interesting perspective, so you should listen to that. Also did an episode with Brady. We're doing off-season episodes inside the team and also outside the team. And in that episode, Brady and I got into Davion Mitchell and where he can go from here and the chances of his retention. Also, we're doing transaction-related episodes, just looking at players. Are they available? Are they available to the Heat? Kevin Durant episode is up. Also, this is my favorite episode lately, episode that we did with a couple of the Memphis guys, including our old friend Mike Wallace, on John Morant. But really, it became a larger discussion about Tyler Hero, what's a true max, because they're in a situation now with Desmond Bane, and then do they give Jaren Jackson Jr. the full max? And even though Memphis and Miami are very different markets, they're kind of in the same place. They were 8 seeds, and they've got decisions to make going forward. So it's an interesting conversation, and we'll definitely bring on Wallace again. And then I'm planning on having George Sedano on for the 3 millionth time because he has some things he wants to get off his chest. But today I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. Again, I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. And we are going to really focus here on one game, okay? One game. And I'm going to go to this game. This was April 7th, 2024. And I remember we were pointing to this game because the Miami Heat they'd blown a lot of games last season. I'm not talking about the season that just passed. I'm talking about the season prior. But they were in striking distance to get out of the play-in. Okay. And they had to go to, it's now called Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It used to be called Conseco. But a place that they've had a lot of history in Indiana. Okay. Some good, some not so good, right? It's a place where Dwayne and LeBron went off and carried them in a series without Bosh. It's also a place where they've lost a lot of heartbreakers. Okay. And in this particular game against the Pacers, we thought, okay, they're going to be geared up for this thing. And they got out of the first quarter down 38-24. And I'm just going to give you the starting lineup in that game. It was Bam, Jovic, Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, and Duncan Robinson, with Tyler Hero coming off the bench. Okay. And Caleb Martin also. Okay. Did they come off the bench? I'm sorry. The way that this is listed here, it makes it appear they came off the bench, but it's hard to really tell. But anyway, the players who played there, Butler played 38 minutes, Bam played 37, Caleb played 36, Tyler 31, Jovic 24, Rozier 22, Duncan and Hawkes played 12, and Kevin Love played 7. Okay, so of those players, who's still on the roster? Bam, Jovic, Rozier, and Duncan for now. Not Caleb. Hero, Highsmith, Hawkes, Love. Okay, so
a lot of guys.
A lot of guys. Other than Jimmy, and I guess it would be Caleb, and that's it, right? Yeah,
yep.
That's it. And that's it. So other than Jimmy and Caleb, the other 8 guys were on the team. Okay, and again, the Heat went down 14 after that first quarter. Actually, and the deficit grew wider. And then they rallied. They scored 32 in the third and 37 in the fourth. And it basically came down to a non-call on a Hero shot, I believe, if you remember that. And that was in the final minute, and the Heat lost by 2. At that stage, Greg, the Heat were 43-35, and the Pacers were 45-34. Okay, I'm going to give you the Pacers lineup there because they had acquired Siakam. It was basically the lineup they're using now.
Yep.
Miles Turner, Siakam, Nesmith, Nembhard, Halliburton. And they were bringing Toppin, McConnell, Ben Shepherd off the bench. Now it's Mathurin that's really getting those minutes. He was a rookie, but he had gotten hurt, so he was out at the end of last season. So essentially 7 of their top 8, the same. Okay. And yet, since then, the Pacers have made a conference finals, and they are within 2 games of going to another one. And the Heat just got swept in the first round as basically a 10 seed and lost the final 2 games by 92 points. These franchises, at least for the time being, have gone like this. Why?
This is it's an interesting topic because, to your point about them going in opposite directions, Indiana, I guess, when they made the conference finals last year, you could say like that was beating expectations. I think they came back this year and thought that they maybe had a shot at it. The fact that they're up 2 games on a Cleveland team that completely dominated Miami, you start to ask, like, how far away are the Heat if the Pacers are up 2-0 against a Cleveland team that basically wiped the floor with you? But truthfully, because of the way parity exists in today's game, I think that this is it's a demonstration that there are teams that are going to break through, and breakthrough could mean a lot of different things. But I think that when you look the way that they're structured, and we'll get into a little bit about like where the players land on the salary sheet and just how their roster is made up and how they built that group, it has a lot to do with the fact that their guys have came together and stayed healthy for the most part. They've hit on some undrafted guys. It's some of the formula that Miami's used in the past. The difference is that Indiana is not a free agent destination. So everything they're doing is via trade, and it's via drafts and development. And the Heat are going to have to lean in that direction more than ever. But I just think and we'll get into Indiana specifically how they got to where they are. But I think the big thing that has changed is, one, Jimmy Butler's gone. So like the Heat are in a transition moment, and the Pacers have capitalized on an Eastern Conference that, as much as we have got teams at the top that had clear best records, there's no denying as you watch these playoffs that anyone can win any of these series. And that's not always been the case in the modern NBA. And I think that's just going to be more and more a reason why teams think that they're maybe not as far as the fans think that they are away, but also they may not be as close as they look at times either. It's a weird balance that they have to think about because teams are just going to be so much closer stacked together. And we're seeing it more than ever in the standings.
Yeah, you're right. And if you go to the beginning of the season, nobody was talking about the Pacers. Pacers made the conference finals last year, and everybody's like, well, it was fluky because all these other teams got hurt. Okay, everybody's talking Boston, which, I mean, they may still rally here. We're playing the Knicks tonight as we speak. By the way, as we're speaking here, it's official. Pat Riley's going to speak Friday at 1 o'clock. So whenever you listen to this episode, probably Riley's coming in right after that. So we'll get a week out of that. Okay, so that's why we're doing all these episodes now. And we'll break down pretty much everything he says. I'm going to have, actually, I have my daughter. She's got a half day, so she'll be asking all the questions. So all the questions that Heat fans want to be asked that I'm afraid to ask, I'll have my daughter do it. Okay. Nobody expected the Pacers to be back here. I mean, before the season, it was, okay, Dame and Giannis are going to figure it out, right? That was a lot of the perception. Philadelphia added Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what Cleveland is. Of course, they outpaced what everybody thought. Boston is still the king of the East. Orlando's primed for a move. A lot of that got short-circuited by their lack of offense, but also by the injuries that they had to Franz and Paolo and also Suggs. Nobody saw Detroit coming this year.
That was a huge surprise.
That was a big surprise. Everybody knew Chicago and Atlanta would be in the play-in because they always are. And the Heat, we were saying, could be anywhere between like sort of 4 and 8. I don't think I saw 10 coming, but somewhere between 4 and 8, depending on how things panned out with Jimmy. And all the Pacers have done is just keep winning, and they're winning with a coach who Rick Carlisle, who Heat fans know very well from his time in Dallas. Actually, at one time, we talked about Pop retiring. We did an episode on that. People should listen to that one too, on Spo and being the longest tenured coach. For a time, Spo and Carlisle were basically tied as the longest tenured coaches with their respective teams. Second longest tenured behind Pop when he was in Dallas, and now he's put a style together in Indiana that's totally different than when he coached in Dallas. And with Halliburton being the engine for that, but also Halliburton was perceived to be overrated. He was one of the most overrated star in the league this season. And yet the man has made 10 of 11 shots in the last 2 minutes of games this season, include 10 of 11. Okay, including
that was a poll by the players, by the way. That
by the players, that wasn't even us.
And I have a theory I'll sneak in here. I think that the large scale majority of NBA players, the reason why they were hating on Tyrese Halliburton in that moment is they didn't like that he was on the Olympic team and got to go for that ride. And maybe other guys thought that they deserved it instead. There's my theory as to why Halliburton would be overrated. Because otherwise, the Pacers overachieved here. It's just that's a weird play to position him as overrated right now.
I think that you're right about that. And then he didn't end up playing, right? And I think I really think Halliburton's refreshing, actually. He's very open with the media, but some people think he's a little corny, and I think that sort of rubs some the wrong way. But, I mean, he doesn't look conventional the way he plays. That shot, when he came out of school, like, we were like, that he's going to shoot with that. And he doesn't move he sort of goes in bursts. But then he knows how to slow his pace down to kind of slide step to his spots. I enjoy watching him. I mean, but the point is the Pacers were not perceived to be a team that would be a top 4 team this year. And yet not only were they, but they had a pretty easy time of it in the first round. Now I know Milwaukee's injuries contributed to that, but still. And then now you're looking and they're up 2-0 on Cleveland. And I think this is the point that you want to get to. We'll also get to this in the build, that you don't really want, as Miami, you really don't want to be in a position where like you're looking up to these mid-market teams. And I know Miami perceives it. Miami will say we're a mid-market team, and by population and all that kind of stuff they are. But they're also an attractive destination. It's like when I had the conversation with the guys in Memphis, and they were very straight. DeMichael was very straight about it. He's like, look, these two teams are in similar positions, Memphis and Miami, but Miami is a destination. Memphis is not. Indiana has never been a destination, and they've always had to get stars other than Paul George, who they drafted, Reggie, who they drafted way back when Pacer fans didn't want him to draft him. They wanted Steve Alford. But they've always had to get stars by trading stars. They traded Paul George. They got Sabonis and Oladipo, right?
Mm-hmm.
They traded Sabonis, and they got Halliburton.
Halliburton.
So they had to give to get, okay?
Always.
And that's where I want to go to you on this, because if you look at it that way, and we'll look at the rest of this build, but the Heat have been reluctant to give to get. Like,
Mhm.
and it starts with Bam, which is the conversation that you and I keep dancing around. But I've said I think everybody needs to be on the table, even if I would prefer not to move him. But also the same applies to Tyler, who we've had conversations about. That typically in an Indiana type market, you have to give to get. In OKC, you've got to give to get. Okay, right? That's why Presti's accumulating all of these picks, and then maybe they'll all go to Giannis if OKC, gets eliminated by Denver. But there are like 10 to 15 markets in the league that you're not going to be able to just get a guy. You have to maneuver and figure out a way. Miami has always had the opposite, where LA, some of these destinations where they're just Miami. As long as you open the cap space, you bring guys in the cap space, or you got a Jimmy who says he wants to go there, and then you have an advantage to try to make a trade, and you can maneuver a couple different ways. And it falls apart with Dallas, but you find another way to do it, okay? Or it fell apart. Dallas is another team to that trade. Or it fell apart with Minnesota the previous year, but when he gets to Philadelphia, you find a way to do it. Miami has not been in the position before where they have had to give to get like Indiana has. And I'm just asking you, is it time in the modern CBA system, and I think Brian was getting at this with me, where you have to give to get?
You definitely have to give to get, and I'll expand upon that in a moment. But this road that you're leading me down slowly about this trading Bam Adebayo stuff, I refuse to do that episode.
We're gonna do it out. No, we're gonna do an hour of this, and I'm not advocating trading Bam to just trade Bam. But I said before Game 4 of that series, okay, I know he's the carrier of the culture. I get all that. I have enormous respect for Bam, and much more respect than I think a lot of fans do. But with that said, I mean, you can't be paying $100 million to Bam and Tyler when they're not going to lead you past the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't. And so I just think everything at this stage has to be on the table. It doesn't mean you're looking to move somebody, but I don't think you hang up the phone on anyone at this stage. I mean, look, at the end of the year, you're a bad team. I mean, you're 37-45. And you got swept and lost the last 2 games by 92.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're not a playoff team. I don't care what anyone says.
You've said that. All right. So on the other side, I'll let you think about this for a second, okay? But are they in the give to get stage? And then I want to look at how Indiana built its team to see if there's any, because typically we should not be having a conversation, even though the Pacers have been a well-run organization for years. Pritchard, others up there, okay? But like, we should not be having a conversation about how it's like catching up with the Joneses, like you're keeping up with the Joneses. Like the Pacers should not be the Joneses in this case. Okay. And if you look at how the Pacers have built the team that challenged the big three teams, or kind of challenged them, right? Paul George was drafted. Granger was drafted. Hibbert was drafted, right? I think even Lance Stevenson was drafted. Yeah. Right. Found Lance Stevenson, right? Like they've done a very good job putting teams, and George Hill was like a low end trade, I believe. I forgot who they
traded Kawhi Leonard for George.
Oh, yeah, no, that was not a low end trade. I'm sorry. My bad. Correction. No, that was not. That's right. Leonard was drafted 15th overall and traded for George Hill. See, I know it's in there somewhere. But you're right. That didn't work out so well. Okay, anyway. But they had Paul George, so I was like, all right, well, what was Kawhi going to do? And then, of course, Paul George and Kawhi reunited, and that didn't work out so well. And the Clippers have paid for that by trading Shea and 75 picks. All right. Anyway. I want to tell you about water cleanup. And I want you to think about the whole give to get thing. We're talking about how to build this. Water cleanup, Florida. Michael Robert, their entire team, one-stop water and mold cleanup, shot more than 200 5-star reviews on Google. Base of Boca Raton, service the entire area, though all the way down to the Keys, and actually all the way to Fort Myers, all the way to Orlando. Get the preventative maintenance. You don't want to have a leak and then have to deal with it. But if you have one, I'm going to give you an example about leak detection. Okay, here. And I've never used it. I literally blew $3,000 at my old apartment because I didn't realize that I automatic paid my water bill, okay, and just didn't check for 6 months. So my water bill went from $30 a month to an average of $300 a month, and didn't even realize it for 6 months. Okay, now if you have a house and you got a leak, all right, and you're an idiot like me and you're not checking your bills regularly, it's going to be very expensive. Okay, so reach out to Water Cleanup of Florida. Mention 5 Reasons. You get a great deal from them anyway, but they'll take special care of you. And they'll do the damage assessment as well, work with you with the insurance company. So reach out to Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz,
They got the guts.
All right, so on the give to get framework, okay, very short conversation here because I know we need to build. But does it make you think about it at all? Because it has always seemed like with the Heat, we're always like, okay, what's the least they can possibly give up?
Yeah,
to
that
get this
mindset.
done?
I think not just fans, but the NBA at large, those NBA observers at large, are tired of maybe Miami being the team that's always looking for a bargain, looking for a deal. And to that point, at some point you have to take a risk. And so far, when the Dame Lillard talks, and I know that they, we can talk about what kind of quote unquote talks they really had, because it wasn't much. But I do think that there was a perception that maybe if you really, really wanted Dame, you maybe would have approached that maybe differently, or Donovan Mitchell, or if it's Kevin Durant when he was in Brooklyn. And there was, I've heard, that there were moments where they thought that could head in that direction, and it didn't, because ultimately paying the price was too high. This past deadline, even when they pivoted and asked about Durant and Phoenix, the cost was too high. At some point, you do have to take the risk. And I think that for every Terry Rozier first round pick that gets squandered, there's probably a story of a team who used a first round draft pick to get a player and it worked out really well. Siakam is a much higher level player, so that's not really the parallel I'm trying to make, but it's about taking the calculated risks, finding those moments, and it has to come together. And as we pivot to talking about the way that they built this team from a salary structure, you'll see when we talk about Indiana, the way that this is working right now for them. But to the larger point here, the Heat, we always talk about picking a direction, right? Well, part of picking a direction is, are you going to be as aggressive and all in as necessary to actually try to put something out there that we can all say in good conscience is a contender or could be a contender? Like, at least show me a path. This team this year, I don't feel like any of us were touting a path forward to a contending season, right? But if all of a sudden they had Durant next to Hero and Bam, you could sell me on a path. They have to either figure out if they're going to be able to field a roster where they can sell a path to being in contention, or they're going to have to pay to become contenders. And when we say pay, it doesn't always mean financially, because Indiana, their payroll is never the highest in the league. So this isn't about spending money. It's how you spend it and when you spend it.
Well, it is. That's totally right. And I think when you look at their payroll, okay, and you look at how this team was built, and again, 2 years ago, nobody was saying like the Pacers are on a path. I'm going to go through their contract, but I know, for instance, like Nesmith just signed a 3-year, $33 million contract. I mean, that's basically what we're looking for the Heat to give Damian Mitchell, right? So, I mean, you're not talking about huge numbers here. I mean, I'm looking at their cap this year, okay? Halliburton makes 42. I mean, so they're paying, okay? Halliburton makes 42. Siakam makes 42. Again, acquired as a free agent.
They're paying, but just to be clear, they'll never pay the luxury tax. Just to put in perspective how the Heat are always over the tax, and we call the organization cheap. Indiana will never pay the tax because they want that disbursement back.
No, I know, but we don't call them cheap. That's
no. Fans, sorry,
fans. And again, that's the Twitter sphere. But they're in the top 10 in salary. The Heat are. I mean, that's just that is what it is. But I'm taking a look at like Halliburton $42 million, Siakam $42 million, Turner $19.9. He's going to be a free agent, right? So that's a decision they got to make. Toppin was a low-end trade with the Knicks, okay? He's become a key bench guy for them, $12.9. Nesmith, we talked about this before the show. They acquired him, gave up a late first and him and some other stuff. They acquired him and a first for Brogdon, right? Is that what it was?
They sold high on Malcolm Brogdon, essentially, yes.
Very high on Malcolm Brogdon, okay? TJ McConnell's on a veteran deal, $9.3 million. I mean, he's tormented the Heat for years. Matherin's on a rookie scale contract. Darius Walker, who played pretty well when he got some opportunity this year, is on a rookie scale contract. We mentioned Shepherd.
And Nembhard's on a rookie deal. You're hitting they have key contenders on rookie deals.
Because Nembhard was a second-round pick, and he's actually the best kind of second-round pick because they got him early in the second. So they got a premium. I love those top 10 of the second round, because you get a chance that a good player slips through, particularly if some of the foreign guys go in the first round that are being stashed. And then you get that second round, one of those guys at the top of the second round, still a pretty good player most likely, and yet you don't really have to pay them yet. So, I mean, that's pretty good. But, I mean, you look at this sheet, and Siakam, did they give up 3 first-round picks for Siakam? Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds correct. Okay,
I'll check it. But, I mean, look, I think when we look at the parallels with the Heat, you know, some of this is that the Heat need a couple of guys to pan out here. Like, I look at Jaquez, okay? Like, with what he showed his first year, you've got to get production out of him going forward if you're not trading him. I mean, you have to get production. Jovic has to develop sooner rather than later and stay on the court, especially, you got an extension decision to make. But, like, on those kind of things where you have some cost certainty, at least at the time being, like, those players need to exceed their contracts. I mean, that's the thing about the modern NBA, especially if you don't have a true max. And I love Bam, but he's not a take over the game type guy on offense. Okay, so and then we're going to talk about Tyler sort of not being a two-way player, and so if that's where you're going to be, and I thought there's a great point that Mike Wallace made on the Memphis pod that we did. But he thinks the NBA needs to change some of these rules, like the Supermax. And I made this point, too, that, like, New Orleans kind of drew the line with Brandon Ingram. Now, David Griffin has since lost his job. But, like, they drew the line. No, just because you're good and you can get this money doesn't mean we're going to give you this money. And that is what the Heat have to do with Tyler. And Ingram ended up getting 40, I believe, from Toronto, but he didn't get 50. And this is they're not every max is a max. Like, that's the thing. There are like 10 guys in the league. Right. And if you start giving maxes to guys who are not maxes, that's where you get in trouble. Now, Siakam making 42 in the modern NBA, Halliburton's contract seemed excessive when he signed it. But now you're like, okay, 42 million. Desmond Bane's making 50, right? Or something like that in Memphis. So you'll take it. But that's the thing. Like, you have to have guys overperform because, again, you can't really pay any more than 2 players more than $40 million each. You just can't.
And that's the timing of this too that I think is interesting when we talk about, like, finding the moment to strike when the iron's hot. It's like, not only is the team healthy and they've got like some good veterans, Miles Turner's the only guy who's stuck around there for a really long time. But like, they made the trade for Siakam. That's worked out next to Halliburton. But at the same moment, they have 2 rookies who are in the starting line, or 2 young players, on rookie contracts that are in the starting lineup ready to contribute at that same moment. When you're separated in a conference by 2 games or 4 games or even 6 games between the top 3 seed and the 7 seed, for instance, so many things come into play with matchups, with who has home court, and it's just a few games that separate you. So a lot of things do have to align, and I don't want to talk about the Pacers as if they're a championship level team, because we can't gush over them too much because they have no titles compared to Miami's titles, at least when we talk NBA specifically. And I'll take Miami's future over Indiana's because I trust these guys to figure it out. But at this exact moment, they've made gambles, and they spent 3 picks on Siakam. I looked that up.
3 picks of Bruce Brown is basically what they spent.
So you know what? They had a bloated expiring contract, and they took a shot on an all-star that needed new scenery. And I bet there were a lot of people that said, well, Siakam, Halliburton, it's a good team, but they have a ceiling. And maybe they do have a ceiling. But part of this is you have to not think like that, and you have to make a calculated risk and go for it. And I think that's what the Heat are looking like. That's what fans are looking for the Heat to do, for better or worse, is kind of just an indication of which way we're heading. And there's been so many players that have moved, Ethan, like not just the Dames and the Durants of the world, but even like all of the smaller trades that could have happened where you supplemented the Jimmy build or tried to reinvigorate it the way that you did around Shaq and Dwayne. Like, there's just that creativity appears to have been lost. And I just feel like that's probably the thing where if there's opportunity to learn from Indiana, it's that, you got to take the risks and you have to pay up in this NBA. There's no team that is going to, even the Lakers and the Celtics are having to give up significant draft capital to make a lot of the trades that they've made. The Celtics got lucky with Porzingis, but I think it's just a different landscape where people waltzing into your cap space is no longer going to take place like it happened with the big three. And the Heat acquiring Jimmy with no cap space like they did in 2019. I can't remember another organization pulling that off since. So we probably shouldn't bank on it as a precedent that was set.
No, you're right. And then it's also a question of how much time a core needs. And, you know, the Heat gave their core basically 6 years. And as Spo said, it was a great 5 years. I mean, that's pretty much where they're at. And okay, now, like I said, everything should be on the table. Doesn't mean that you're rushing to dump Bam and Tyler. It just means everything should be on the table. And you got a new core that you got to try to assemble and put together. And the Pacers may go the other direction. Some of these other teams, but to Brian's overall point, and that pod, I've already recorded one of them. We're going to do another one, but to his overall point, and we'll, you know, when we post that, people get a sense of it, is that Detroit's coming. They have a superstar now. Okay. And now they can kind of figure out what they're going to put around Cade, because I think Cade is the kind of guy you can build a team around. Orlando is not going to get worse, I don't think. It seems like they're all in. They kind of know what their deficiencies are. So you look at some of these other teams in the East, it's not – and that's why he was like – and we're not even talking about the West and all OKC's picks, the fact that Jokic is still in Denver. Who knows what's going to go on with the Lakers and Luka. But there's a lot of traffic in the way right now. And basically what Brian is saying is, you know what? It's just like any of those nights you're coming back from the arena, and I can speak to this because it takes me an hour and 45 minutes sometimes to get home from Miami to Fort Lauderdale. I'm not a Dade County fan. And at a certain point, sometimes I just decide, you know what? I'm going to get off on US 1 and go to Steve's Pizza. Just fuck it. Like, I'm not going to fight this. Like, what
like
is
a
this?
1 year thing? Is that what you're saying though? And I know that I want to lean into the Steve's Pizza reference.
That's basically what he's saying. And he'll get into the detail there, but it's like, you're driving home. They've shut this down right now. The NBA is shut down to one lane. Okay. And I can tell you, what are they doing with that construction down there, by the way? What I know you don't live here anymore, but you're from that area. North Miami.
Under construction forever, especially
what
Northeast
the hell are
Miami.
they? There's nobody even working. Okay. They just shut it down to F with me and everybody else. Brady took like 3.5 hours to get home the other day. Okay. He's not even old enough to drive. And so we're you're driving up and it's like, you got to get off. And that's kind of what the NBA looks like to me right now for the Heat. It's like, all right, we could try to fight all this traffic, or, you know, we get off on the exit. We wait it out for an hour.
But all the one seeds are down in their current series. So there's also an argument to be made that if you assemble it right, maybe you can pick off a top team. So more to be discussed.
Anyway, I'm hungry. All right. I know you are too, because you love that place. All right. Thanks to Greg. Thanks to our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida. Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get on there today. That keeps us in business. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.